Hello and welcome to the final round. I'm your host, Stephan Bonnar, joined as always by Mr. Matthew Holt and big
start calling me money pretty soon.
Money man Holt. We are up, had a good week last week. Two big fight cards this week. We got a UFC Saturday, of course, Bellator Friday, and you wanted to talk a little bit about your good picks.
Well, look, we started with our $500 bankroll, right? We bet 400 of it last week. We went 3-3, but we hit we hit two underdogs in James Krause for our biggest bet for 150 to make 100, and Elkins and Stevens getting home at big plus money prices. So our $500 starting bankroll up to $595 this week for the big dual card.
Woo! All right. And UFC 220 Saturday, Bellator 192 Saturday as well. Whoa, they're going head to head. Usually Bellator goes on Friday. They usually don't go head to head, except that time me and Tito fought and we smoked them. Most watched fight of 2014. But main event, UFC 220, Miocic against Francis Ngannou. And Ngannou,
I thought we were going to Bellator first.
You want to do Bellator first?
Yeah,
knock it out?
Yeah,
all right.
Let's
knock out Bellator first. Main event, Chael Sonnen versus Quinton Rampage Jackson. Last fight, Jackson came in at 253 pounds. I believe this fight is at heavyweight because it's part of the heavyweight tournament. Expect Rampage to be too heavy for Chael to lift up. This might be a boring snoozer, or I could see Quinton hitting him with a hard punch and Chael laying down.
And right out of the gate here, and what's interesting is I have 8 plays this week, 4 on Bellator, 4 on the UFC pay-per-view, all 4 Bellator plays on totals, all 4 UFC plays on sides, and I'm going to go with the total on this play. It's a 3-round fight. Quinton hasn't looked like he's had any finishing power since moving over to Bellator. He's gone the distance with guys they've set him up to look good against. Went the distance with King Mo. Look, Quinton's always had a good chin. He's always been pretty durable. But he's just never in shape anymore, so he doesn't have that explosive firepower he used to. But he is going to be huge compared to Chael. And how is Chael going to win this fight? He's going to try to grab Rampage. He's going to try to wrestle Rampage. And if Rampage, he could hit him and catch him and finish him. And I thought about betting Rampage here, but he's been so out of shape in Bellator that I'm not sure how much he's going to go for it. Instead, I'm going to go ahead and bet this one to go the distance at even money. 50 to win 50 out of our 595. I'm going to bet 50 to win 50 that this one goes the full, that goes over 2.5 rounds.
The over is at even money. If you like Rampage, he's at -160, so you're going to pay a little bit more for that. I personally going to put a small play on Rampage as well at -160. Co-main event, the title fight, Douglas Lima versus Rory McDonald. I like Rory in this fight, but at -220, you think the play is in the over. It's over 3.5 rounds. These guys are both really durable, and I don't think that's a bad play at -145.
Yeah, I'm not betting this one. This isn't one of my Bellator bets, actually. I'm going to leave this fight alone here. Look, there were so many ways. I wanted to bet Lima at this price at plus 180 against Rory's 220, and but then I remembered the first Koreshkov fight where Koreshkov was able to dominate the ground game against Lima. That was the difference in the fight when Koreshkov beat Lima for the title. Of course, Lima getting the knockout the second time they fought. And I could see Rory doing that to him as well.
I thought about really solid ground.
Yes, really good. And I thought about playing the over, but Rory's also a finisher on the ground. I just can't figure this fight out. I think Doug Lima's live, but I didn't want to put any of our bankroll on it here. If you put a gun to my head, I think I'd play him. He's been undervalued for some reason throughout his entire Bellator career. This is a guy who is a fairly significant underdog to Lorenz Larkin, no problem, took care of him. Was a significant underdog to Andrei Koreshkov the second time, no problem, knocked him out. Destroyed Paul Daly. I mean, this is a really talented, really underrated fighter here in Douglas Lima. I didn't play this fight yet, but if I was going to bet it, and I'm not putting any of our bankroll on it, I think I would side with the underdog.
All right. Yeah, I think the difference in this fight will be the ground for where he could get it there. Expect him to have an advantage. Moving on, Yamauchi, he's a pretty big dog. Michael Chandler, -270 favorite. You know, of course, this is one of those they love finding Chandler, these hand-picked opponents, and they love Chandler. They want Chandler to win. You know it, although Yamauchi looked really good when he beat Piccolotti. Was that his last fight, I believe?
Yeah.
And but you're playing the under in this one.
I'm going to go again on the under in this fight. 50 to win $57.50. We're going to round that up to $58 just for the sake of this show because we don't want to count change. 50 to win 58, that this fight goes under 2.5 rounds on this one. I don't think Yamauchi is a hand-picked opponent for Michael Chandler here. In fact, a lot of people question why Michael Chandler took this fight. He certainly could have taken another fight with one of the Pitbull brothers again, or gone on to face Henderson again in a rematch, or waited for Brent Primus' injury to heal up and then fight Brent Primus in a rematch for the title. This is a really dangerous guy, Yamauchi, that he's fighting. He's one of the best scramblers in all of Bellator. I mean, he just catches guys in the scramble in all kinds of submissions. And that could end up being the case here. But on the feet, Michael Chandler is going to enjoy massive advantages in size, power, strength. And if he catches Yamauchi, I could also see him putting his lights out in this fight. So I see both guys' path to victories in this fight are through a finish. Either Chandler getting the knockout, or Yamauchi catching him in a scramble and maybe submitting him. Either way, the under in this fight seems to have value to me. And at plus 115, I'm going to go ahead and fire 50 on it.
All right, pretty much a pick 'em for the under. And moving on down, Aaron Pico versus Shane Crutchin. Huge favorite, Aaron Pico, and you don't see this one going past the second round, do you?
No, I'm also going to take the under on this fight as well. Third bet on the Bellator card here for me. Going to bet 60 to win 50 here, risking 60 to win 50. That this one also doesn't go past 1.5 rounds. Look, Aaron Pico's had 2 fights in his professional career. His pro debut, coming off that Olympic gold medal, all that hype, all the, the crazy hype surrounding him. He goes in, he gets knocked out in 24 seconds in his pro MMA debut on Bellator, on national TV. Comes out of that fight on a mission, and you talk about a guy who came out in his second fight, ultra aggressive, hunting for the knockout. And not only did he get the knockout, but I thought he was forcing it. I thought now, okay, you revenged your little 24-second knockout debut loss. I think if he settles down in this fight, one thing about Bellator that they tend to do a lot more than UFC, especially with guys starting to build, is they'll go ahead and give you squash matches that you're supposed to look good in. Aaron Pico is supposed to seek and destroy here against Shane Crutchin, and I don't see it lasting very long. I'm going to lay 60 to win 50 that this one doesn't go past midway the second round.
Nice. And last but not least, Henry Corrales, Georgie Karkanian. This one is a pick 'em pretty much. Karkanian at minus 120, but once again, you see both these guys are really durable. This one going the distance, and you're gonna take it at minus or plus 170.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and lay $90 to win $45 on this fight. That this one goes over 2.5 rounds, minus 200. It's a big favorite here, but I don't see either guy really getting a stoppage. Both ultra durable, both good enough on the ground to defend submissions, and it doesn't feel like a fight to me that's actually gonna end up on the ground too much. Georgie may go for takedowns, especially if Corrales lands some heavy leather while they're standing up, but Georgie's not always the greatest finisher on the ground when it comes to getting submissions. I think both these guys are really durable. I mean, Henry Corrales had a great, very competitive fight with Emmanuel Sanchez. Georgie's been in there with some tough guys. They're both really durable. Neither one's a great fit. Look, this is a really important fight in the Bellator featherweight division. Winner probably goes on to get a really good fight. Loser's back at the bottom of the pecking order, so it's a really important fight. It's a pick 'em fight. I could see either guy winning, but I think it's going to make it to the judges' scorecards. I'm going to lay 90 to 40 to make 45 that it goes ahead and does that.
All right, Matt, loving the over-under. 4 out of the 5 Bellator fights. Me, myself, I like Rampage Jackson, Rory McDonald, and I also like the over in the Rampage Sonnen fight.
Should have just took all our money and put it on Aaron Pico.
Right? Right. Or like last week.
Exactly.
Usman, yes, exactly. Well, that's it for Bellator. And moving on to UFC 220. And see, like, Matt really loves playing the over-unders. I'm not a big fan of it. I try to stay away from that. And don't worry about it on the UFC card. We are actually picking winners this time. We have no over-under bets on this card. We have straight up who's gonna win type of bets on this card. And let's start off with the heavyweight title. Stipe Miocic against Francis Ngannou. Ngannou, a 2-1 favorite in this fight. I think that line's gonna go up. Right now, Stipe's about a plus, at some sites plus 160 to plus 180.
Yep.
I think by Friday.
Plus 175 right here now, live at the
Right
punch.
now.
Yep.
And I think this line's gonna move a little more in that direction, and I'm hoping to get them around plus 200. What do you think of that strategy, waiting until Friday to place that bet?
I am actually going to do the opposite here. I'm going to go ahead and bet him now. It's going to be my smallest bet on this UFC card. We had 6 bets last week on the UFC card. I'm only going to make 4 on this card this week. But we had 595, so I'm going to...
You don't see the line moving in the way of the big scary...
It may, but I'm not sure. So I saw it already go to minus 200, and what I saw yesterday was some sharp money coming in on my Otsic that drove it back to 190. So I think this line's actually going to fluctuate. I actually think it's going to fluctuate between minus 185 on Ngannou and minus 210, and probably not go too far out of that range, because we have to remember here, Stipe Miocic's the champion. He's the name. He's the guy that people have seen lately. And I think the sharps tend to like him a little bit in this situation as well. So even if the public's on Ngannou a little bit, and look, Ngannou's a beast, but go out in the sportsbook right now and ask 100 people, hey, do you know who Francis Ngannou is, and do you know who Stipe Miocic is? And I feel like more people will know who Stipe is in the book than Ngannou. So I don't think you're going to get this public title wave yet. I feel like this is the kickoff fight for Francis Ngannou. Win this fight by devastating knockout as well, and now you're a superstar. Now we set you up with a July fight versus Brock Lesnar for a bunch of money and try to turn you into that next great UFC star. But I'm going to go ahead and lay 45, small bet on Stipe Miocic. We had 595, so we'll take 45 out of it, put it on Stipe, because these guys are just so similar. Francis Ngannou on a 4-fight, first-round knockout streak over Alistair Overeem, Andrei Arlovski, Freight Train Hamilton.
Curtis Blades.
What's the different? What is Stipe Miocic on? A 4-fight, first-round knockout streak over Alistair Overeem, Andrei Arlovski, Junior Dos Santos, and Fabricio Verdum. So they're both on a 4-fight, first-round knockout streak. Although Miocic's a little bit more impressive. 2 of the guys are the same on both lists, except the other 2 on Stipe's list are Verdum and JDS, and the other guys on Ngannou's list, one's retired in Freight Train, and I've never seen the other one again. So, I just feel like this is a fight where these guys are really even. I don't expect it to make it out of the first round. The betting odds, where it's 1.5 under minus 160, tell us it's not supposed to get out of the first round. Somebody's going to land a bomb against the other, and they're going to go to sleep. But why can't it be Stipe? He has more technically sound boxing, I think you'd agree, coming out of the Golden Gloves, and with his boxing technique and experience, better boxing footwork. We saw him knock Fabricio Verdum out moving backwards with that footwork and catching him coming in. His stand-up skills are really, really strong here. I actually think it's Ngannou who, if this fight goes to the ground, Stipe would be in a lot of trouble. But is this fight going to go to the ground, really? What have these guys done, basically, the last 2 years? They just stand and knock people out. I actually give the stand-up advantage to Stipe, and at that, or at least even, and at that price, even means I'm getting plus 175. I'm on Stipe. I'm on the champ to retain.
You got to give the power advantage to Ngannou, but Miocic could crack himself a lot of knockouts. But the thing I like about Miocic, not only his wrestling pedigree, but the fact that he's been 5 rounds before.
Yeah.
It went to the 5th round with Mark Hunt. The first fight with JDS went 5 rounds, and he's answered the bell for the 4th and 5th round. Ngannou's never been out the first round. His sole loss, he lost the decision in a 2-round fight.
Well, he had 2 UFC fights. There were 2 rounds.
Well, went into the second.
Yeah,
right?
went into the second round.
Or Curtis Blades couldn't answer the bell for the second round. Yeah, and
so
one
he
fight barely went
round,
into the second. Yeah, so he's never heard the bell for the third, fourth, and fifth round. I think Miocic is gonna fight a smart fight, not be too aggressive early, keep his hands up and his chin down, and just try to get this fight out of the first round. And the farther it goes out of the first round, I think the advantage lies in Miocic. He's got the big fight experience. He's got the experience of going the distance. And if he's smart, he's not going to try to finish or force a knockout too early. And that's the way you get a dangerous guy like Ngannou. That's the way you last with him. Yeah. When you go out there and start trading hands too early, like, you're just asking for trouble. If you fight a little smart, try to get his timing down, his rhythm down, then your chances of getting knocked out in the second and third or get less and less and less. And he's a smart fighter. He's proven that. That's why he's a champion. That's why he's defended the title. And that's why I like him as an underdog in this fight. I'm going to take him. So, all right, right now, you can get him at plus 175. That is actually a little bit better on the betting odds I checked on the way in. He was on that side plus 160. I was hoping this line would move more in that direction. So Matt thinks it might not be the best idea to wait until Friday. That plus 175 is a pretty good price considering he is the champion. Yeah. So if you like him, bet him right now. All right, co-main event, another title fight, Daniel Cormier versus Volkan Esmadar. And this fight has a really similar feel to it to the Miocic and Ngannou. Esmadar is this really dangerous guy who knocks people out early. But once again, he hasn't been in the third, fourth, and fifth rounds in the UFC. Like, it's his first fight. He's
Vince St. Preux.
Yeah, 2-1 in the UFC is, 3-0 in the UFC, a split decision win against OSP.
But if you remember that OSP win, they were both so gassed in the third round. So, and Cormier's a smart fighter, and he's got great wrestling. Volkan Esmadar lost to Kelly Anderson with a neck crank. So I'm sure Cormier knows he's an Olympic caliber wrestler. He's going to look to get the fight to this ground early. And if he does, Volkan is dead meat. Look what Cormier look what he's done to everyone. Most notably, I remember him just mauling Dan Henderson like a bear, who's an Olympic level wrestler. You know, Volkan does not have the same caliber grappling as Dan Henderson. Expect him to be in a lot of trouble once this touches the mat. I wanted to bet Daniel Cormier in this fight. I thought about betting Daniel Cormier in this fight.
Minus 320 though.
That's the problem. I was hoping this line was going to be closer to $2 because the recency bias on both is Cormier got knocked out in his last fight. Yeah. And Volkan Ozdemir in his last two fights hasn't even worked a minute combined, knocking out two ranked guys in Jimmy Manua and Misha Serkunov. We're both ranked guys. Yeah, and he creamed them both in less than 30 seconds. So, you know, I was thinking that, look, here's a spot where maybe the public, maybe the money's going to come in on the underdog here, but that hasn't been the case. And you know what this fight reminds me of? Hey, a heavy-handed guy who's not great on the ground, facing an Olympic caliber wrestler, Daniel Cormier. Look what all you have to do to know anything about this fight is look what he did to Rumble Johnson twice. Look what he did.
And Rumble Johnson has extremely strong hips. Look what Rumble Johnson was able to do to Phil Davis and shuck off those takedowns. And he could not stop the takedowns of Daniel Cormier. Esmadar does not have his chance stopping those takedowns, but he does have a chance of clipping them early. But just like Matt, I don't like that minus 320, laying down $100+ to make 30. Just not my kind of bet.
And the problem with betting it with Cormier is that he is coming off a knockout loss, the first and only knockout loss of his career, and at almost 39 years old, coming off a devastating KO.
Did his brain heal? Like, he was out, face crutched against the ground, eating unnecessary shots.
I just don't know anymore.
How's his rattled brain?
How is he going to handle a shot if Uzdemir? Because let's face it, Rumble hit him the first time they fought with a monster right hand that like sent him tumbling across the ring.
And the second fight, he caught him with the shin upside the head too, the left high kick of Rumble's, and he ate it. But
at some point, and you know it, the chin goes away.
Yes, look at Diego.
So I just couldn't pull the trigger on minus 320, but it's hard. The only clear path for Uzdemir is knocking out a guy who's only been knocked out once, and that was by the best ever, Bones Jones.
In the
I couldn't
first
pull
round.
the trigger.
All right, Calvin Kattar, a Boston guy, Sityatong, Mark Delagrati fighting Shane Burgos, and right now Burgos -170 favorite. Burgos is 3-0 in the UFC. He has 2 decision wins, 1 third-round TKO. Calvin Kattar, all his wins has been by decision, seems like, at least the ones I've seen. He's 1-0 in the UFC, and he's a 150, plus 150 underdog. Are you touching this fight?
You know what? I have 150 left, so I might as well bet the whole 595 this card. I wasn't going to bet this fight, and now all of a sudden, not only am I going to bet it, I'm going to make it my biggest fight of the night, because if I have to lay it on a favorite, I might as well go hard on the favorite. I'm going to bet Shane Burgos in this fight. 150, which will probably get me about $90 back. We'll call it 150 to make 90 on this fight at the -165 current price on Shane Burgos.
Wow.
I am not a fan of Kattar. You know what always interests me is Kattar is actually a guy they brought in as a big underdog in his UFC debut as a fill-in to fight Andre Fili. And he beat Andre Fili. Well, now you can't cut him. You got to bring him back in. But the problem with him, to me, is 7 straight wins by Kattar by decision. Most of those on the regional
outside of the UFC. Yes, he doesn't.
And not just outside the UFC. It's not like he's a Titan or one of these Bama. Outside the UFC, fighting in like CES and these New England promotions that you've probably never heard of. 7 straight decision wins. 7 straight of his wins by decision. And this is a guy who just, you know, he fights mostly with Combat Zone in New Hampshire and in CES in Connecticut. Shane Burgos is the real deal. He's 10-0. I love the Team Tiger Schulman right now. That's Jimmy Rivera. Some of those guys are really coming to life in that team. They have another guy from Team Tiger Schulman, Julio Arce, on this card as well. And I love the way Jimmy Rivera and that team are working right now. I'm going to go ahead and lay 150 to make 90 on Shane Burgos.
Wow. All right, next up, Francis Marburo, Nova União in Brazil. He's fighting Gian Villante. He's the Team Serra-Longo guy, and right now, Gian Villante, a -170 favorite. But look, he's lost all 4 of his last 6. He's lost to Fabio Maldonado, Tom Lawler, who's an 85er, Ir Latifi, Shogun. He even lost to Patrick Cummings. And he's fighting Francis Marburo. And Barossa, not bad. He's 5-3 in the UFC. He got submitted by Nikita Krylov and has a split decision, lost to Hans Stringer, but he's a solid guy, and I think if there's an underdog to take, if you're like me, you like looking for an underdog, this is an underdog to take. I think he's got better stand-up than Villante, and his wrestling defense isn't too bad. He comes from a good camp, and Villante just seems to lose all his big fights, and I just don't have a lot of confidence in him. That's the way I like Barossa.
You know, Gian Villante is one of those guys that usually wins or loses in spectacular fashion. He was winning against Shogun Rua and got knocked out. He was losing badly against Corey Anderson, got that crazy 3rd-round knockout. You know, his fights tend to be either spectacular knockout or getting knocked out. You know, and he's not great anywhere. He does bang hard. You know, Barosso's one of those guys that you look at and you go, oh, he looks scary. And then you watch his fights and you're like, okay, so he has wins over a super old Ryan Jimmo, retired, a super old Elvis Mutapik, retired after. You know, Darren Stewart, the first time they fought, it was actually a no contest due to a headbutt. Then it was just like a split decision win over Darren Stewart the 2nd time. I just don't see it all of his wins in the UFC are by decision, but he's supposed to be this huge puncher, and he's this huge muscly guy, and you know, Villante's going to have the reach advantage, the power advantage. I don't want to bet either guy here. I don't know. Villante finds a way to lose fights that he's winning and finds a way to win fights that he's losing.
So you're going to pass on this one?
I'm going to pass, yeah.
All right. Next up, Rob Font, another Boston guy versus Thomas Almeida, and you got some hometown love for Font. This fight's pretty much a pick-em. Almeida -120. Matt likes Font in this fight. I like Almeida, so we disagree on this one. And what do you like about Font?
Look, I love Rob Font, and you talked about Mark Delagrade. Here's another Delagrade fighter, and he's one of my favorite Delagrade fighters. Look, these two are going to throw down.
Yes.
These are two really strong, really power-punching 145-pounders. And I know that Thomas Almeida gets a lot of love, and it's easy to go watch any of his fights and go, this guy's awesome.
Yes.
He either knocks you out in spectacular fashion, or in the Cody Garbrandt fight, gets knocked out in spectacular fashion. People go, oh, he went the distance with Jimmy Rivera. Yeah, okay. Rivera seemed like he was always going to win that fight. Here's what I think's interesting about Thomas Almeida. Let's look at his last, 4 opponents and what they did after they fought Thomas Almeida. Are any of these guys any good? Albert Morales, 1-2 since he fought Almeida. Anthony Burchak, 1-3 since he fought Almeida. Brad Pickett, 1-3 and retired since he fought Almeida. Yves Jobin, 0-1 and retired since he fought Almeida. So no one that Almeida has beaten in the UFC has gone on to have any success in the UFC. And what's interesting is all of them hurt Almeida in the fights. I mean, Brad Pickett almost had him knocked out multiple times in the first round. He was destroying him. Albert Morales had him hurt. Anthony Burchak was just nailing him. I don't know that anyone has ever thrown a punch at Thomas Almeida, even in his general vicinity, that didn't land square in his face. I mean, he has never ducked a punch in his life. And against a finisher like Rob Font, who's going to be aggressive and come with those big hands, that could spell trouble. And what I've noticed in the last 2 years is that MMA crowds and MMA judging have unfortunately, and this is a little bit unfortunate, but it's a recency bias, has started to look a little more like boxing judging sometimes. And in a fight where two guys are going to be throwing a lot of volume, the crowd is going to be erupting when Boston Rob lands every time. And if this one does go to a decision, it's hard for the judges not to be influenced when two guys are constantly throwing lever, and every time one guy throws, the crowd goes crazy. When another guy throws nothing, I think that's an advantage for Boston Rob here. I'm taking Rob Font, 50 to win 50 at plus 100 to beat Thomas Almeida.
All right. A couple more fights I personally want to talk about. Brandon Davis. He is fighting Kyle Bochniak, and pretty much this is his big debut, and this is a good fight for him. They want him to win. He was on the Dana White Contender Series. He looked really good. And Bochniak is 1-2 in the UFC, and really, like, his losses to Jeremy Kennedy, Charles Del Rosa, not really world beaters there, and I think they're bringing Brandon Davis in here to win. This fight's pretty much a pick-em. He's minus 115 right now, and I think he's gonna win this fight against Kyle.
Yeah, I mean, Davis trains with that up-and-coming gym down there, the Alan Belcher gym in Mississippi, that also has, like, Jason Knight, and, you know, Alan Belcher started it.
Team, yeah.
They're starting to get some good fighters down there and put together a good team, so I do have respect for that gym. Bochniak is another one of those guys. The first 5 fights of his career came for that classic entertainment and sports promotion that mostly does shows in Connecticut at, like, Foxwoods and Mohegan Sun and those places, local shows. He did beat another guy on this card who's a big favorite, in Enrique Barzola, who's a minus $2 favorite in his fight, and Bochniak did beat him, but he's not really great anywhere, and I ended up passing on this one. I didn't want to lay the big price with Davis. And really, I might have thought about Davis had it not been for the fact that Bochniak has a win over a guy who's a minus $2 favorite on this card.
That's a good point. Hell of a point there. All right, Sabon Homasi against Abdul Razak Halasana. And isn't it funny that there was another Abdul Razak Halasana, the exact same name, that fought in the light heavyweight division. Steve Cantwell broke his arm. What is that, like the John Smith of the country? Is that just a common name? I think it's wild, the exact same name, but he is a big favorite, minus 230. And they fought last time. It was a great fight, 1 round of fury. The guys were slugging it out, and Homasi got dropped with a punch, immediately started working for the takedown. Referee Herb Deeb stepped in and stopped it prematurely. That's why they're playing this one back. And are you surprised to see that Al Hassan's that big of a favorite, considering it was pretty close?
So here's where records and things can be deceiving. Halasana is 8-1 with 8 knockouts, all of which are in the first round. Literally every single one of his wins are first round knockouts. But the one thing I have noticed about him, and he's fought in the UFC a couple of times now, including I saw him lose in the UFC to the Russian guy whose name I can't suddenly remember.
Akhmedov.
Yes. And what I've noticed in all of his UFC fights, he shouldn't be fighting at 170 pounds. Look, maybe I don't want to tell a guy to cut weight, but in today's society where these guys drop a lot of weight, you don't see a lot of really successful under 6 foot tall welterweights. I mean, think of some of these welterweights, how big they are now. Stephen Thompson, Neil Magny, Tyron Woodley, and now you bring in 5'9.5" Halasana, and look, he is all power and he goes for it with every single punch. But the size difference, go back and watch this fight on Fight Pass, folks. Hamas was a lot bigger than Halasana in this fight, and I don't know that Hamas is a good opponent for Halasana because he's also a power puncher.
He's going to stay in the pocket and slug it out.
And slug it out.
And his record deceiving too for an 11-7 record. I mean, this guy is pretty good. Although he's 0-2 in the UFC with that controversial loss to Omasi, and then lost to a 6'2" Tim Means.
And I wasn't even sure that he got caught. So they were catching each other. Halasana did land 2 big punches, a big uppercut and a big left hook in that exchange.
By his own admission, he said he got caught, but he's been hurt worse. So he did legitimately get dropped. If you see, it was a delayed reaction. He got hit with that left hook, and then a couple punches later, the right hand grazed, and you can see the balance went a little. And sometimes it takes a little second for the legs to catch up with your brain, but he definitely got dropped. I watched that over and over in slow motion.
And then immediately goes for the takedown.
Yes,
and there was no follow-up. Herb called it
right away,
really fast. And he right away was like, what are you talking about?
Yes.
It seemed like a premature stoppage. I'm glad they're running it back.
That's why they're running it back.
And I'm taking the underdog here. I'm going to go ahead and lay 50 to win 90, basically, at plus 185 that this time Hamasi may get the win. The bigger, stronger guy in a slugfest. I'm going to go ahead and take a shot.
Yeah, I agree with you. If this fight does go into that second, third round, he's probably got the advantage there.
And Halasana put so much energy into every punch. I'll tell you, near the end of that round, he felt like he was fatiguing.
That's a hell of a point. All right, Matt likes a dog in this fight. I think Halasana will get it done again. Another one we disagree on. And last but not least, the only other fight I care to talk about is the Julio Arce Dan Iggy fight.
I bet the Ortiz fight.
I totally missed the Dustin Ortiz Alexandre Pantoja fight. Right now, Dustin Ortiz is a dog at about a plus 150 underdog in this fight. But you think at minus 160, the Pantoja is the way to go.
No, I got Ortiz in this fight. I love Dustin Ortiz in this fight in an underdog situation. Dustin Ortiz feels like he's been around since the inception of the flyweight division because he's fought everybody. Wilson Heiss, Joseph Benavides, Brandon Bam Bam Moreno. He's just fought them all, right? Justin Scoggins has a win over Zach Makovsky as well. I mean, he's basically fought the Jussier Da Silva. He's fought the who's who of 125 other than DJ and Henry Cejudo, basically. And he's, he loses some, wins some. He's won 2 of his last 3 now, but this guy's still only 29 years old. And he is a really talented fighter. And on the other side, I understand that Pantoja has a great record. He's only 27 years old. He's 18-2, and he's on an 11-fight win streak, but he's only 2-0 in the UFC with a split decision win over Eric Shelton, who's not very good, and a win over Neil Seery, who I think just retired. So, I mean, his wins aren't that impressive. They both lost to Jussier Da Silva. Pantoja did outside the UFC. But I think Dustin Ortiz has the experience advantage here. He's going to be the harder puncher in this fight. He's probably at a disadvantage in the submission game, but I actually think his pace and his amount of output are going to cause... Pantoja's never seen anything like it. The last time he did was Jussier Da Silva, who finished him. I'm going to go ahead and take the underdog Ortiz here. 50 to win 75, Dustin Ortiz.
All right. Yeah, right. Last but not least, Julio Arce versus Dan Iggy. I know you wanted to talk this fight. I believe you made a play on it as well.
No, I didn't. That's it for me on bets that I made so far in this fight. I just remember talking about Julio Arce because he also comes from that same team, Tiger Schulman Jim, Jimmy
That's
Rivera, some of the other guys. And I like that, Jim. And it'll, I think he's probably the value. What's interesting here is, the guys on the top line there always opened an underdog. The guy that opened the underdog in this fight is now minus 140. So a lot of love for Arce here. When you break the fight down on paper, I actually like Edge a little bit in this fight. I think he looks better on paper. I've watched both of them fight. They both have one win on the Dana Fight Contender Series to get to this point. The value might be on Inge if you put a gun to my head and made me bet it now, but I decided to pass.
All right. Well, either way, you have 8 bets on the 2 fight cards combined. Both fights are on Saturdays, so get your DVR ready to record one of them.
One more interesting note about this card real quick. Gleason Tebow in the opener on Fight Pass. Machekov in this fight is a minus 180 favorite right now. Gleason Tebow coming off a 2.5-year steroid suspension. And I've heard from people, who else have we seen that didn't look so great coming off big uses of steroids? Vitor Belfort, Chael Sonnen, Vanderlei, a lot of these guys. But 2.5 years after a career, I've heard this guy was on what he got caught with for a while. And Gleason always looked like he looked like.
And he's been around. I mean, his
2+ years since he stepped in.
He's 38 years old now? He's up there.
He's in his 30s, and he's had over 60 fights or something.
Huge,
but what is this guy
career
going to look like now without the juice? 2 years removed from fighing. I didn't bet it yet, but I know this is one of those lines. Watch the weigh-in. If he looks like Vitor did, then this line at minus 180 will seem like a bargain on Makhachev because it'll go to over minus 300.
Oh, right.
So worth keeping an eye on the weigh-in. How does Gleason Tebow look 2.5 years removed from a steroid suspension?
All right. 8 total bets from Matt. Bellator's just playing the over-under. He's got some good picks and good reasons to pick him. The UFC card, we disagree on 2 of those. And we're waiting till weigh-ins to see how Gleason Tebow looks after the steroid suspension. There you have it. Thanks for tuning into the final round. Enjoy the fights this weekend, and we'll catch up next week.